Let's start by talking about this Republican project of tax reform. Is that how you feel about it?
No, I thought you were going to ask about something else. But tax reform, yes, I actually want to talk about tax reform.
I thought you might.
You know, to my mind, there are two sectors of the economy. The non-productive sector, which is government, and the productive sector that actually makes stuff and sells it to people who want it. I want to have, whatever the result of tax reform is, I want more money to be left in the hands of the people who rightfully earned it.
Do you think that, can you guarantee that this is going to be a middle-class tax cut in the end?
I want everybody to have a tax cut across the board, and I think it's a big mistake if we don't. And I've been agitating publicly, privately, and otherwise, but I can say I've had direct conversations with the president, and I said I'm very worried about the original template that they put out, not cutting taxes on the middle class and or upper middle class, people kind of in the middle of the income spectrum. And he's assured me that it will be, or he will not sign it. He's pointed his finger at his people and said, make it so, and I take him at his word. I mean, he's already come out forcefully for saying, you know what, people are going to be allowed to deduct their 401ks, and I appreciate that forthrightness and that he's not passive and just going to let what happens happens.
Would you vote for a bill that did cut people's 401k contributions?
No, I don't want to have that at all. I'm not sure if I'm going to respond on specific items other than to say that for me, voting for the tax plan needs to be a tax cut, and it needs to be everybody across the spectrum. It cannot be that people in the middle have to pay a penalty so a corporation gets a tax cut. Am I for a corporate tax cut? Yes, it'll help the country, it'll help keep American jobs here, but I want everybody across the board to have some tax cut.
And if this tax bill adds to the deficit, will you vote for it? Can you guarantee that it won't add to the deficit?
Well, you can't guarantee that unless you're in charge, and nobody made me dictator for a day or even for an hour. I would balance a tax cut with spending cuts. So when the budget came forward recently in the Senate, I introduced an amendment that said we should look at the entitlement spending, the mandatory spending, which is 2/3 of our budget, and we should find savings there. And I got 4 Republicans to vote with me. So 5 people in the United States do believe and are fiscally responsible. 5 people on the Republican side are actually not hypocrites and actually do believe in cutting spending. But most of them, frankly, who are unwilling to cut spending, I do think it's hypocrisy, and it's why the debt goes up under Republicans and it goes up under Democrats, and frankly, it's both parties' fault.
Are you a guaranteed vote with the president on tax reform? He says repeatedly in tweets that you are.
You know, I do want to be, and I plan on being, but I plan on agitating to the very end, and I think You've had a lot of practice doing that. Yeah, I think they were uncertain enough about me because I voted against the budget twice this year, the only Republican to do so. They know that if they screw it up, if they end up raising taxes on the middle class, they could lose me. And so I think in some ways that gives me some leverage to make sure that there is a middle class tax cut. The president is with me, so I'm completely with the president on lowering the corporate income tax, middle class tax cut, keeping American jobs at home. I'm completely with him philosophically, and I want to make sure that the bill ends up there. And I think I have some leverage to make sure it does, because I think they need my vote.
Let's talk about what I assume you thought was the other project.
That's the thing we're not going to talk about.
There is a civil war going on inside your party right now. The president said that Bob Corker could not be elected dog catcher in Tennessee.
Right.
Is that presidential?
You know, I think that there is a bit of a war going on, and to me it's interesting because I'm sort of also at war with my party a lot of times too, but I'm at war on sort of policy differences on whether we should balance the budget, have spending cuts, and I think that's a fine place to be. In fact,
Do you think he's conducting himself in a presidential manner?
I'm getting there. But I think that when you keep it on policy, so for example, I've opposed the president on major policies this year, on the fake Obamacare repeal, Obamacare light. I've opposed him on several bombing in Syria, things like that. But we still have a very good relationship because I don't attack him personally. And so what I would say is going on, and it's not one-sided, it's like when you're a kid and your parents say it takes 2 to fight, there really is a little bit on both sides. So on one side, there's this high-mindedness that they're going to condemn the president's character. But in doing so, it's sort of like perfect people can condemn other people's character. And if I tell you, Casey, I think you're immoral and you're a thief and you're a liar, do you think we can have a conversation? We can't do that. And so the thing is I think we should avoid sort of character assassination or condemnation. Now you're a pundit. You can say whatever you want about the president. But if we're working together, I would say it's a better thing. I'm more than happy to go to war with the president on occasion and also support him many times as well on policy. But I try to refrain from sort of making judgment about his character, because when I'm perfect,
does character not matter for the presidents?
Well, of course it does. But the thing is when my character's perfect is when I can start criticizing other people. So I think there is people who live in glass houses need to be aware of that. And I just don't think, I think it is a holier than thou thing, and there's a lot of it going on y'all's side and the media as well, but it's going on with some politicians as well. But to tell you the truth, what are the American people more concerned with? They probably think, like I've said, it's a People magazine saga that really we should be getting onto policy. They would rather see have a debate and maybe some discussion on policy rather than the other part. But I would say that it's both sides. It's not one side or the other. Both sides are engaging in this, and I frankly am choosing to hopefully be in another place.
I feel like you still haven't answered my question about whether he's conducting himself in a presidential manner.
I gave a really long-winded, circuitous explanation of my position, didn't I? No, I think the thing is the problem, here's the problem.
I mean, would you conduct yourself this way if you were the president of the United States?
I think everybody's different, and I think the president has a unique style. But, you know, people have attributes, and then we have other things that people say, well, that's not an attribute. When I look at the president, and when I work with the president, I see the glass as half full. We're from the same party, and we have many things aligned. And I've been around the president many, many hours, probably as much as anybody in the Senate. And I choose to engage him on the things that I think we have common ground. So, for example, bombing Syria, I disagreed with the bombing in Syria. I disagree with a lot of the military intervention that the president's chosen to do. But I choose not to confront him on that or other particularly things of personality difference. I choose not to engage on that, but I choose to try to find common ground. I love his cabinet. I love the Supreme Court pick. I love the fact that he's gotten rid of more regulations than any president in recent history, including most of the Republicans.
Do you guys like each other personally? You played a lot of golf. Is the president a good golfer?
The reason he and I get along well is when I first showed up to play with him, I said, I'm not taking any welfare from you. I'm not taking any strokes. I'll play you even up.
You play the blue tees?
He's better than I am. He's probably about a 7 handicap, and I might be twice that. And then I might be stretching it. But I enjoy playing with him. You know, it's competitive. We talk a little bit of policy, but it is camaraderie, and we get along, you know, very well.
I want to ask you about another Republican who has loomed large in this fight, and that's Mitch McConnell, your colleague from the state of Kentucky. Do you think that Mitch McConnell should be supporting groups that are personally attacking Steve Bannon? That's what he said he's going to do.
I think there is a war going on in a civil war in the GOP, and it's less the sort of Twitter war, character war that you're seeing between people, and there is a policy war going on. And there's going to be a debate and a discussion, and frankly, I'll be part of this. I'm going to be involved with primaries around the country, also trying to.
Are you going to weigh in on Republican primaries where there are Republican incumbents here in the Senate?
No, I'm not going. I'm not going to be opposing colleagues in the Senate, but in open races, I will get involved. We're helping and asking people to, you know, be a part of groups that will help in these races.
Do you think you'll be on Steve Bannon's side more often than Mitch McConnell's side?
I'm going to be on the side of limited government, constitutional government, that we should declare war before we go to war, that we should balance our budget, and that we have to have spending savings. I think the biggest problem with Republicans in Washington, without naming names or making it personal, is that there's a large amount of hypocrisy. We run for office and we say we're conservative and we say we care about the debt, and yet the debt doubled under George W. Bush, doubled again under President Obama, and I probably think it's going to double again because really there is insufficient care up here for spending and for debt. And so I want people who truly do care, people who truly believe the federal government should only do what it's allowed to do explicitly by the Constitution.
Do you think Steve Bannon's making the Republican Party stronger?
I think he's mixing it up. And like, once again, I don't, you know, we complain about sort of character assassination one way or another, and yet we want to make it so personal. To me, it isn't about Steve Bannon. I've met him. I have nothing bad to say about him, and I'll probably support some of the candidates that he's supporting. But it isn't about, you know, me and Steve Bannon against Mitch McConnell.
Is Mitch McConnell a good leader?
Excuse me?
Is Mitch McConnell a good leader?
You know, the thing is when we look at like Obamacare, I promoted that we should repeal it, and I forced votes on that.
But yes or no, is he a good leader?
Well, I'm getting to that. You guys, some answers aren't yes or no.
We're running out of time here.
I'm getting there. But what I would say is that on repealing Obamacare, he was right there with me as far as wanting to repeal the whole thing. He also worked with a coalition to be for a bill that I wasn't for. So once again, I oppose Mitch McConnell sometimes on policy, but I keep it on a level such that I think we have good relations. And do I think he does a good job herding the cats that are up here? The disparate different philosophies, right, left, and middle. It's a difficult job, and I think he does a good job with it.
Very last question, and this is also a yes or no question. Would the country benefit from a Republican presidential primary in 2020?
I think no one can stop primaries from happening, and there could well be a primary that happens. Before you even get to that, you need to know, is President Trump running for re-election? I think you won't know that till you get into sort of second, third year of his presidency. At this point, I can't see myself supporting anybody but President Trump, because I think he's given us the most conservative cabinet we've seen since Reagan, maybe more conservative than Reagan. We've repealed regulations for the first time in 20 years. He gave us a great Supreme Court justice, and I'm hoping he gives us a couple more if we have retirements. So I see the glasses half full. Doesn't mean I agree with him on everything. There'd be people that, if we could end the Afghan war, that's who I would support. But I don't think that's going to be an alternative to President Trump. So I like to accentuate the positive, the things I agree with him on, and I would support him.
Still not a yes or no answer, but thank you very much.
We need a primary. I think that's a pretty good answer.
You do think you need a primary?
No, I think it's a pretty good answer I gave you, that we have no idea. You can't answer a question
I asked if it would be good for the party.
until we know Trump is going to run or not.